Love that sound. Okay. Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another CMO Circle webinar. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, these webinars are recorded and will be found on the YouTube channel, YouTube/, don't forget the @ the CMO Circle, so you can watch it back on that. Please like, rate, and subscribe, and all that type of stuff for what should be some excellent content. My name is James Hamlin, in case I didn't introduce myself and in case you don't know me. Hello. So we have one speaker today, and he is going to be taking us to another side of the world, where it's probably even hotter than it is here. Or it might not be, actually, because the climate can be a bit weird over there. Hollywood storytelling with the Hollywood edge. Exciting. I'm pumped up for it. I've seen some of the slides, so I'm even more pumped up. So without further ado, I'll let him introduce himself and provide the content. As you say, his face is up there, prepped and ready to go. So I will introduce you to Lyndon, and Lyndon, please take it away.
Thank you very much, James, and hello, everybody. Yeah, that is my heavily airbrushed face. I'm much less good looking in real life. Thank you to everybody for joining. My name is Lyndon Nicolson. I'm the founder and CEO of Future Present. Very quick headline about Future Present. We are, as the name suggests, a specialist presentation design agency. So we create high impact presentations for high stakes moments. Is one of our strap lines. So we're really looking to kind of help people with when the chips are down, we create fantastic presentations for them, whether that be sales meetings, town halls, product launches, investor presentations, and the like. You get the idea. And as a result of what we do a lot of storytelling within the presentation decks we create for people. Quite often people come to us and say, look, I know roughly what it is that I want to say, or I want to take my client from here to here in terms of a sales or a presentation journey. Can you help us with that? And so we employ a lot of tried and tested techniques that we've unashamedly stolen from the big screenwriters in Hollywood. So that's what I'm going to cover today. So a lot of this will be I will talk specifically to presentations on occasions, but very much the principles of what I'll be talking about apply in all forms of marketing communication. So hopefully there'll be some good tips and tricks for you from there. So I want to start by setting the scene for a moment. Imagine if you would, you kind of sat around a campfire. Everything is good with the world. You know, you're safe, you're warm, you're with people that you trust, and you're feeling happy and relaxed. And then suddenly somebody unleashes a short string of 4-letter words, and everybody stops and pays attention. And those 4-letter words are the tried and tested once upon a time. Where as human beings, we're then naturally attuned to stop what we're doing, listen really carefully, because we know that we're about to be told a story. Once upon a time is the way we start stories in our kind of home life and when we're together. And we like to start to apply that principle to business storytelling. So how can we apply Hollywood storytelling to brands to create stories that sell? So if I click through to kind of some of the most famous storytellers, you know, Hollywood is a place of kind of opportunity, of glitz and glamour and excitement. It's, you know, it's stretching back well over a century. It's a place of kind of imagination and escapism, and kind of it's where the very best in storytelling happens. And the most successful brands I've seen really tap into this. And one of the kind of the much used and possibly overused examples is, of course, Nike. And people say, well, Nike don't sell trainers. They really kind of sell aspiration. And it's kind of like they're a lifestyle, and they're kind of they're selling a winning attitude as much as they are the kind of the leather and the rubber that you put on your feet. So Nike sells the inspiration to allow you to be a better version of yourself in those trainers. So how do they use story to kind of bring that to life? Well, we'll dive into that in the next 30 minutes or so. And we'll dive into, you know, what's it got to do with you and your company, and why you should be using story. So the thing is that human beings, we're hardwired to relate to stories. We've been using them since the beginning of time, as kind of this cave painting visual suggests. Stories are one of the oldest forms of human connection. They help us to engage with the world, to make sense of it, and to build bonds between us. Um, there's a fact that kind of things are 22 times more likely to be remembered if they're told as part of a story that can then later be recalled. And we all know that kids react very, very strongly, in particular, to stories being read to them. And there's something really special about kind of those bedtime stories with children, where you're kind of snuggling down together, getting warm, and there's something that's fundamentally that they're very human about it. Um, Conversely, if I sat down with my kids in the evening and started reading, I don't know, a recipe to them, for instance, um, they'd understand it, but it wouldn't have the same resonance. It wouldn't have the same effect with them, and it wouldn't draw them in, and it wouldn't engage them, and it certainly wouldn't affect them on an emotional level. And that's what we're trying to do with storytelling. Now, if I go back to our campfire again, and we've heard those words once upon a time, but this time something's different. This time the story is about us. So we maybe hear our name, we hear something to do with our job, something to do with a common problem that we have, something that we can immediately relate to. We will lean forward even more and we'll become even more engaged because we're pre-programmed to listen to stories, but we're also pre-programmed to listen to things that are about us or people that look like us. And that's where the most successful storytelling happens. So how does it work? Well, first of all, we have to start taking our audience on a bit of a journey. Um, the most important part of the storytelling, in my opinion, there's kind of a few chunks to it. The most important bit is figuring out the journey that you want to take your audience on. This could be the journey over the course of a presentation. It could be the journey of a brochure that you're writing. It could be the journey of a website. Most marketing communications involves a journey of some description. So is your journey that you simply want your audience to know more about your product or your service? Is your journey that you want them to understand how you differ from your competitors? It's really vital when you start to create your story that you know where you want to take your audience. If you don't, it's kind of like the equivalent of getting in a cab and just shouting, "Just drive, and we'll figure it out as we go." You've got to have that plan at the beginning, otherwise you're wasting lots and lots of time and money. How does that work in reality? Well, in all great stories, the hero goes on a journey of some kind. Not necessarily a physical journey, but some process of transformation, and that's particularly appropriate to business. Take take Harry Potter, for instance. Harry starts out kind of quite unloved and neglected, living under the stairs. He travels to Hogwarts, learns all sorts of stuff about friendship and resilience and of course magic. He then faces Voldemort and comes out on the other end as a completely different child, more self-assured, confident, and so on. And loads of stories follow that same sort of pattern where the hero or the central character goes on a very impactful and very memorable journey. Star Wars is another very, very obvious example of that. And if you think of pretty much any story, whether it be children's stories like The Gruffalo, or through to Hamlet or Forrest Gump or anything you can think of, the hero almost always undergoes this process of change, and they come out the other end wiser, more experienced, and so on. So apply this to presentations, for instance. Your audience starts their journey when they enter the room or when you fire up your slides. They'll come to that point with certain pre-installed beliefs or perhaps even misconceptions, and maybe they have some prejudice that you need to reshape in some way. Do you need to change their opinions, or do you need to persuade them in some way? What resistance is it that you need to overcome? Almost like the psychological transformation for the hero, if you will. You need to think about where they are mentally or kind of what their understanding point is at the start of the presentation, and then think about where you need to take them by the end. So, what does that destination look and feel like? What should your audience think, feel, and believe at the end of the presentation? That's what you need to get really, really clear on at the beginning. And the gap between those 2 points, where they are at the beginning and where you want them to be at the end, is the transformation that they need to undergo as the heroes of your story. So think carefully about the events of your story that force the audience to undergo that change, leaving the starting point and eventually reaching the desired destination. Once you think of your presentation or any form of marketing communication as that journey, and a process of kind of persuasion, you'll start to see the shape of the story emerge. The next part is identifying who's your hero. Lots of people talk time and time again about the hero's journey, but few, in my experience, really genuinely understand it. And many implement it really, really badly because it's a bit half-baked. So let's just break it down a little bit and start with kind of one really, really important point. And the hero of your story is the person either sitting on the other side of the table or in the room if you're presenting to them. It could be the person that's reading your brochure, viewing your website, watching your TV ad, whatever piece of marketing communication it is. The audience is the hero and not you. The hero is definitely not you. And this is something that hits home to people time and time again. And loads of people go wrong. To make that communication, it's almost like kind of using kind of mobile phone technology, is kind of flip the camera around, make them the center of the story that you want to tell. And that means really, really understanding them, getting under their skin, learning what makes them tick, and understanding what are their kind of motivations in life and what drives them, what bores them, and so on. And what problems are they currently experiencing right now? That's what you need to tap into when you're understanding kind of how you can make them the hero of your story. Because only once you can make them care can you start to affect or influence their behavior. And once you know who the hero is, only then can you place them at the center of your story and make sure that your story is based around their needs, their wants, and their desires. And most corporate presentations and also kind of a lot of websites and other communication tools are so fixated on what the company themselves want to say that they actually give very, very little thought to this important point, and the kind of the hero they're trying to reach. The approach is often kind of very top down or kind of very me. They start kind of detailing stuff like the history of the company and how many offices you've got and what your company structure is and all that guff that it arguably is, it's probably important, but it definitely shouldn't be at the front of the presentation, and it definitely shouldn't be the hero of the journey. It's almost like thinking about every presentation or other form of communication as a bit of a contract. You're asking your audience to kind of invest their time to listen to you or to read what it is that you want them to read. And the payback is that you then give them something that's relevant to them, and they get something valuable in return. So you need to make sure that the balance of that power is even. So by putting the audience member at the center of your story as the hero, you're talking directly to them. You're making that human connection that we talked about earlier, and you're tapping into what they're thinking and feeling at that particular moment in time. Because if you do that successfully, they'll become far more receptive to your message. So you need to ensure that you've got that human connection at all points. So then we need to look at the next step, which is who are the villains? If you've got heroes, you need villains. It's kind of the balance of life. So for instance, for every Superman, there's a Lex Luthor. We talked about Harry Potter and Voldemort earlier. There's similar kind of heroes and villains in most successful Hollywood stories. You can probably think of plenty of stories that have an obvious villain. There's always kind of that conflict of some type, kind of some sort of inbuilt tension, or some sort of friction, and that's where drama comes from. That is the very essence of drama. It's almost like the DNA of any Hollywood feature film. And when it comes to presentations or websites or any type of communication, you need to think back to your hero and understand what threats they're facing. Now, threats is probably a little bit dramatic in itself, but it's kind of what are their problem statements? What issues are they trying to solve? What challenges they're looking at day to day? and importantly, what's at stake for them if they do nothing, because that can be a threat in its own right. The cost of inaction. So by thinking really carefully about what conflict it is that is facing your hero, you can help guide them to the right solution. And storytelling really works by creating that sense of anticipation, that conflict between your heroes and your villains, and taking them on a journey where that conflict keeps coming back. So you keep raising and falling the threat levels or the conflict levels, to create that tension. So you eventually get them to the point where they're so well invested, they can see that you've solved their problems really, really well, and that you're meeting their needs head on. That when you get to the end of the either the presentation or the website, you're looking for them to click a call to action, then you've framed everything so perfectly that you've taken them on that journey really successfully. So there's kind of 7 fundamental steps to this that we try to employ when we're creating these storytelling journeys. I'm not going to read this slide bit by bit to you, but you can see what those are. So you're going from the beginning at the end, where you're starting with the conflict and doing all that kind of identification of the heroes and villains at the beginning, and then following this journey through stages 1 through 7, kind of coming to point 6, where you've got that kind of aha moment where they go, right, I get it now. You do successfully understand me. You know what my challenges are. You know what my pain points are. And now there's a very clear and confident path ahead. So this is the structure that we tend to employ. Now, structure is important in storytelling, and it's important in a number of different ways. So we talk a lot again about the 3-act structure. Again, kind of most theatre, films, even a lot of novels will follow a very, very clear 3-act structure, where you've got a hook at the beginning, a midpoint, and then a climax followed by a call to action at the end. So once you've thought more broadly about the journey that your hero will be undertaking, it's time to almost kind of create the plot. Plot, again, is a word that kind of we've borrowed from Hollywood storytelling, and the plot is fundamentally the events of your story, how they propel the journey forward to get them to the end conclusion. So you need to consider what the central thread is that's running through that plot. What is the underlying conflict that is driving that story onwards? Nearly every single story that you'll ever read, and every Hollywood movie follows this format really tightly. So you can see here I've broken this down into these 3 steps, and it might feel a bit restrictive and formulaic, but it really does work, and you can kind of break this down into micro steps along the way as you need to. There are genuinely infinite possibilities within this particular framework, and every act should be almost like self-contained, so that they contain story arcs of their own. So Act 2 is typically longer than the others, because that's where the main thrust of the action occurs. So just to kind of talk these through, the hook is like the opening scene. It's where you entice the viewer in. You have to give them a reason to keep watching almost. You'll start to see this a lot with kind of, if you look at analytics from places like Netflix, if you haven't got a really, really good hook at the beginning, then, watch time stops after about the first 3 or 4 minutes, because you haven't kind of managed to grip the viewer. So you need to have a really solid hook, and this is the same on social, online, in any sort of marketing activity. That hook has to be really, really powerful, especially as attention levels are decreasing all the time. So you have to engage the viewer at the beginning. It often works to ask them a question at the beginning, intrigue them, give them a sense of what's to come. Intrigue is really, really powerful when it comes to storytelling. Then you come to the midpoint. That's the point of the story where the stakes are really really raised. It's almost like the moment of truth. The hero can see what they're really up against. It's also the kind of the turning point in the plot in a lot of instances. And very often up until now, the hero has been kind of relatively passive or reactive, and things have been happening to him or her. And the midpoint is the point where they can kind of be more proactive, and start to make a shift in the direction of the plot. And that's almost like the point in your presentation or in your web journey or whatever it is, that you want them to start to kind of make the decision and go, yeah, this is for me. I understand now. This is kind of something that I'm really interested in and want to take forward. And then, of course, the climax, that's kind of the culmination of the story. It's where the hero kind of fulfills their own kind of character arc. And it kind of marks the resolution of the plot. So it's almost like the final 10% of the film, or in this instance, the web journey or whatever it is that we're looking at. So if I look at sorry, next one. So if I look to kind of map this onto kind of a film that we probably all know about, so you can see here in Jurassic Park, you've got kind of the hook, kind of the cage beast. You've got lots of workers rustling in bushes, and then the cage lifted. And although we don't really see inside it, we kind of we can see this kind of unknown beast kind of drags people in. And we can hear the kind of beast eating, a kind of almost kind of foreboding and a glimpse of what's at stake. That's the taste of what's coming. That's kind of creating the hook and the intrigue, and it's getting people invested and making them want to watch more. You've got that kind of inciting event. You've got kind of Hammond invites the paleontologist to his island, and they're not sure. They have to make a choice at that point. They could walk away, but then the plot point is kind of where there's no turning back. And if everything ended here, the hero would kind of still be kind of would kind of remain unchanged. So it's kind of almost like the culmination of the first act is kind of here, where you kind of start to see the first dinos. It's kind of a really important part in the story. The pinch point kind of comes around here, and you can see my mouse moving kind of right in the middle. It's kind of like the first obstacle. Kind of you can see kind of how the plot moves forward. And I won't kind of go through and kind of dissect the rest of Jurassic Park for you, but you can see how, if you think back to how the Jurassic Park story unfolds, you can see how that maps kind of really carefully onto this 3-act structure. And there's lots of other examples of this. So you've kind of got all these different what we call story beats and different points in the story through lots and lots of stories. So I've got a few examples here. So you can kind of see the first one here. Kind of if we're looking at Lord of the Rings, kind of the story beat is kind of the ordinary world, where kind of Frodo is in the shrine and kind of life is peaceful. And if you map that to kind of business or marketing, it's almost like your customers kind of managing okay, but kind of a bit stuck. Kind of further down, you've maybe got kind of meeting the mentor, where kind of Gandalf gives some guidance and kind of a bit of a shove forwards. And in marketing or business sense, that's kind of where you, the brand, enter, and you're kind of not as the hero, but as the guide, as kind of the sage, and you kind of become a trusted advisor. There's lots of examples, and we can share this with you later once we send the notes out. You can kind of start to look at these in a lot more detail. That you can see kind of all these different story beats, and there's some here for Lord of the Rings. The same, I've dissected Jurassic Park in a little bit more detail for you on this one, and again through Star Wars, which is a really kind of common kind of example used for great storytelling. So once we've kind of then got our 3-act structure, we'll then kind of employ one of several story shapes. I'm not going to kind of dissect these in too much detail for you in this call, because each of them could take about 30 minutes in their own right. But with the one we've looked at in a bit of detail today is the hero's journey, but there are others, and we'd be really happy to kind of talk to you about these in a bit more detail in a subsequent session if that would be of interest. So storytelling and applying Hollywood storytelling to marketing communication is all about creating this consistent narrative. It's about kind of defining your core narrative at the beginning, kind of figuring out who your key characters are at the beginning, your heroes, your guides, your villains, and then creating your messaging framework around that with this one voice kind of across many formats. And that can include things like your elevator pitch and your mission, your tone of voice, and so on. And then kind of a really important part that we kind of really advise people to do is particularly when you're looking at presentations, is really train your team to understand the story and to be able to tell it successfully in their own sales meetings. So that's a really, really quick blast through of how we apply Hollywood storytelling to presentations. Could genuinely kind of go on for hours, but wanted to kind of leave lots and lots of time for Q&A. So should we go there now, James? Does that work?
100% we can go there. Absolutely. I haven't seen any questions in the chat as such, but people feel free to put them on to chat or shout out and raise your hand if you have any particular questions for Lyndon, we can absolutely go through those if we'd like to do that. And maybe I'll start with one from myself. A couple of slides back, you talked about this idea of the midpoint and the climax. Like I'm sure lots of us have sat here constructing these presentations with an audience where frankly that audience is not particularly engaged, unlike this one. And we're sort of thinking, look, you know what? I might not be able to make it to that climax. So how do you know when to sort of like maybe bring that forward and kind of set it up? Because often that climax can be the sort of telling part. What's your guidance for that particular bit?
Yeah, so I think you can definitely kind of shape your story as you go if you're in a presentation in particular. And we very much kind of advise our clients to make presentations as interactive as possible, to almost kind of get feedback after each kind of after each pinch point or after each moment of tension, and try to get the people that they're presenting to talk back to them about that tension. You know, is that something that you're experiencing yourself? Is that something that you've felt in the past? Do you see that being an issue for you in the future? So the more that you can make that interactive, if you feel your audience is almost kind of being a bit more subdued and not sitting forward in the way you would want them to, then trying to kind of get them to talk back to you about those tension points can be really really powerful. But it's always good to have multiple tension points to kind of talk to. And if you can see that you want to kind of bring things forward, just cut a step out if that's what you need to do. You can kind of very easily by applying that 3 act structure that we talked about. If you've got into the second act, you can you can move forward to the conclusion much quicker if you're really structured about the way that you're kind of telling your stories.
Got it. Makes sense. I see a hand up, not a virtual hand up, an actual hand up in a virtual setting. Hi, Paul. Go for your question, Paul. Go for it.
Thanks, James. I can't find the hand button on my tablet. Lyndon, what really resonates with me is the point you made around people tend to try and make themselves the hero of the story rather than talking about the client.
Yeah.
So I see that a lot, and it's just more reflection. I mean, why? Um, why do people continue to make this stupid, vain error?
Yeah, we call it we and all over your slides. People say we do this, we've done that, we sell
Okay, yeah.
this. And I think there's I don't honestly know why people do it, but people do it all the time. The analogy we sometimes use is kind of if you're going on a first date, if you go there and you talk about yourself all the time, you're very unlikely to get the second date. But if you go and kind of the person that you're on a date with, you're asking them lots of questions, you're showing interest in them, you're showing that you understand, then people will come away and go, that was a great day. I definitely want to kind of go on another date with that person. I think it's sometimes human nature to want to talk about ourselves, but it's definitely a mistake when you're in presentations in particular.
The one kind of mitigation that I've seen, and my favorite example of this is always Samsung, right? So and Apple actually as well. So big, arrogant companies.
Mm.
But at least with Samsung, it's because they're all in fear that they'll get fired if they don't put in the stuff that the group head office and Korea has said that they must say,
Yeah.
right? But it's still insane. So I really resonate with that. I'd love to talk to you more about it. But I'll shut up for now. Thank you for the presentation. It's a good reminder of the classic, I mean, my fundamental thing on presentation, I do some talking about this as well, is it comes down to people not planning for it properly. So they end up cramming. A, they start writing in PowerPoint, mistake, and B, they don't leave enough time to actually play it back and read it and actually tell the story to someone who has nothing to do with the actual topic, because that's the person who should be able to understand it, not your team or your boss.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Next question. I get this for long form, but how about applying it to short form?
I think you could apply the same tried and tested technique to a 30-second commercial if you really put your mind to it. You've still got the kind of the intrigue at the beginning, the kind of the creation of tension at the beginning, and then the speedy climax. Kind of I'm not an expert practitioner in 30-second short form video, but I think you can apply exactly the same principle. So yeah, I think it can be kind of equally as valid.
Well, that's okay because we're all dealing with platforms when we have to do ads that are less than 6 seconds now, so it's fine. Okay, great. So next question, Atom. So much to unpack here. How long should the presentation be? And more importantly, what do you think the split between presenting and Q&A should be?
I think it should be 50-50 split, which hopefully is pretty much the number that I've hit today in terms of presenting and Q&A, kind of eat some of my own dog food. I think there's no right and wrong answer to how long a presentation should be. It's, literally how long does it take you to properly get your message across? There's definitely an effectiveness curve in terms of if you bore people for too long, then you'll start to see them disengaging and sitting back, and you're kind of killing them with kind of really dull, boring PowerPoint. Um, so, the slightly glib answer, and I apologize for it, is it needs to be as long as it needs to be. If you've got a really really complex story to tell, then that'll naturally just be a longer presentation. I do tend to say to our clients, try to kind of keep the nuts and bolts of your presentation under 45 minutes if possible, because you will start to see engagement levels drop off at that point. But if you can do it in 20, even better. But don't artificially cut yourself short. We quite often see people coming to us and saying, "I've been told to present this in a maximum of 20 slides." I think that's such a silly approach to take personally. It's like if you really need 30 slides, and sometimes it's better to break a message over 2 or 3 slides anyway. Slide counts are kind of the enemy of success in my view.
Any major kind of, I know we're all on Zoom now, but lots of us do meet in person fairly regularly. Any kind of major like in person more do this, virtual more do this? Any things you've seen from all these kind of presentations and clients you work with that kind of one is leaning more to one medium than the other?
I think there are different technical restraints in different platforms. So, face to face, you can use more animation and video and sound and so on. But you can do that reasonably successfully online as well, as long as you kind of keep it to a sensible level. I think where I see most success with in-person presentations is where you can kind of get your story out of the way quite early on, kind of the nuts and bolts of the story that you want to tell, but then almost like have a very interactive session as well. It's almost like you've told them your story, then it's you open it up, and you could have a nice kind of menu-driven section to your presentation, and say, okay, what did you find most interesting? What do you want me to cover in more detail? Are any of these particular pain points relevant to you? Would you like to see some more case studies? And making it as interactive as possible, as quickly as possible. So you get it out of the way, tell them your story, but then kind of make it interactive, and that works really really well in person in particular, but not impossible online either.
Got it. Makes sense. Thanks for that. What else we have here? Vanessa, yeah. Maybe imagine a presentation in the style of a choose your own storybook. Yeah, I was thinking that as well. Those are very popular back in the day, probably still are now. Jennifer Elworthy, very interesting. Do you have any examples of this Hollywood structure working brilliantly in LinkedIn posts? Yeah, we all do lots of them to do our storytelling. Any of those jump out to you, Lyndon?
Don't have any examples that spring to mind off the top of my head, but you do see it happening quite a lot. Where people apply this exact structure, and you will see that kind of where people have been quite diligent in creating that kind of that 3-act structure to their to their LinkedIn posts. You do see kind of pretty good engagement with them. We can try and pull some examples out of that later if that would help.
Great, got it. Okay. I'm not sure how many more questions we have. I'm conscious I have so many questions. I don't want them to ever just be just me, but I do have one I do want to get out there if that's okay. So we're talking at slides, storytelling, we get all that. I think most people on this call have probably been producing slides in some sort of format and putting them in front of people with various mixed results for probably many years. Are we still going to be doing this in this similar type of format for the next few years? And I guess what I mean by that is, it's like, yes, we find someone, we have a call, here are my slides, flip, bang. And your talk is called the Hollywood Edge, right? It's like, where do you see this? Does it go somewhere else? Obviously, the slides can become more virtual, more come to life, more AI videos, lifelike type of stuff. I mean, I'm sure you could probably get George Clooney to do those slides for you in probably the next 18 months or so for about 40p. But like what's where does this go? Do you know what I mean? Or are we still going to be doing similar types of things like this quite soon, just with a bit more polish to it?
Yeah, I think the more day to day and the more mundane side of presenting, where you're kind of doing a lot of internal type presentations or board reporting or kind of client dashboards, all that type of stuff. That's almost like the fundamentals of the way we kind of go about our day to day and do business. I think that will radically change. It is already changing, but will continue to change. I think the high stakes presentations, there's kind of those really important moments where you want to get somebody to invest in something or make a big purchase or kind of persuade them. I think that's where story-driven presentations is not going to go anywhere quickly. Sure, the technology we use to create them might change, the speed at which we create them might change, but the kind of the actual sitting in front of someone, whether it be on a call or in person, and presenting to them and telling them a story. I don't think that's going to go anywhere particularly quickly, personally. And I would add to that, I really hope not, because that's how I make my living.
Okay, good. I don't see any more questions. If there are any, get them in quickly. If not, we do appreciate it's an incredibly sunny day for this country anyway. Talking of you about you making your living, like how to what we'll follow up with folks after this particular webinar. Is there like will you share these slides? Do you have a course people sign up to? Do they have like a they grab 30 minutes with you? How does it work? What's the logical next step? Do they bring slides they've already made and you get in the Hollywood director's chair and you say cut or whatever? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I don't have a course that I'm trying to flog you. We'd just really like to kind of have one-on-one human conversations with you. We are always really, really happy to just kind of get on a call and chat and look at what it is that you're doing at the moment. There's no cost to that, no obligation, just a look at it and critique what you're doing at the moment. Where it's great, we'll tell you, if we're kind of pretty honest people. If you're already doing it exactly as we do it, we'll say that straight from the get-go. But where we can offer you some advice, we'll very happily spend some time, give you some actionable tips that you can either take away and implement yourself, or we'd be delighted to help you bring them to life in whatever way possible. So always really, really, really happy to chat. I'm very findable on LinkedIn. There's only two Lyndon Nicholsons, and one's a black man from Sheffield. So you can tell kind of that's not me. You'll find me really, really quickly.
Got it. Understood. Okay, so we'll follow up to all the attendees with those in an email so they can find you and put them in the description on YouTube as well. So that should be quite straightforward. Lyndon, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
I think I just want to chill out and watch a movie this afternoon. Anyway, maybe in the sun, but that's the inspiration. Maybe Lord of the Rings, maybe something else. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Really
Great.
appreciate it, and we'll speak to you soon. And thanks for everyone for attending.
Great.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks, everyone.